The South Georgia Islands, a remote and rugged archipelago located in the South Atlantic Ocean, are among the most fascinating yet least known territories on Earth. These islands are part of the British Overseas Territory of South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. Renowned for their breathtaking landscapes, rich history, and extraordinary wildlife, South Georgia stands as a unique and significant location on the global map. It lies about 1,390 kilometers or 864 miles southeast of the Falkland Islands and 2,150 kilometers or 1,336 miles from the southern tip of South America. The island is approximately 167 kilometers long and varies in width from 2 to 40 kilometers. It is the largest island in the archipelago, surrounded by numerous smaller islands and islets, the most significant of which are Bird Island, Anankoff Island, and Cooper Island. The topography of South Georgia is dominated by steep, snow-covered mountains, deep fjords, and expansive glaciers. The Allardyce Range runs along the spine of the island, with Mount Paget, its highest peak, reaching 2,934 meters, or about 9,626 feet. It is also home to several large glaciers, including the Fortuna, Neumeier, and Gold Harbor glaciers, which contribute to the island's dramatic and rugged landscape. South Georgia's climate is classified as polar, characterized by long, cold winters and short, cool summers. The temperature on the island rarely exceeds 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit, even in summer, and winters are harsh, with temperatures often dropping well below freezing. The weather is notoriously unpredictable, with frequent storms, high winds, and heavy snowfall, especially at higher elevations. The history of the South Georgia Islands is a captivating tale of exploration, exploitation, and eventual conservation. However, it wasn't until 1775 that South Georgia was formally claimed and charted by Captain James Cook, the British explorer renowned for his Pacific voyages. During his second voyage in search of the fabled southern continent Terra Australis, however, that is a topic for another video. Cook ventured into the South Atlantic and on January 17, 1775, landed on South Georgia. He conducted a brief survey of its coastline, which he described as a land doomed by nature never once to feel the warmth of the sun's rays, but to lie buried under everlasting snow and ice. Cook claimed the island for the British Crown, naming it Isle of Georgia in honor of King George III. The sealing era in South Georgia began shortly after Cook's discovery, as the island's remote location and abundant marine life attracted sealers from Britain, the United States, and other countries. The fur seal population, in particular, was highly prized for its pelts, which were in great demand in Europe and North America. The first recorded sealing voyage to South Georgia occurred in 1786, led by English sealer James Weddell, after whom the Weddell Sea is named. Over the next few decades, sealers descended upon South Georgia in large numbers, often operating from temporary bases on the island's shores. By the early 19th century, the intense hunting pressure had decimated the fur seal populations, leading to a significant decline in the sealing industry. As seal numbers dwindled, some sealers turned their attention to the elephant seals, which were hunted for their blubber, used to produce oil. The decline in sealing activity by the mid-19th century due to overexploitation left South Georgia once again a desolate and largely abandoned outpost, with only sporadic visits from sealing ships. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw South Georgia become a pivotal center of the whaling industry. The island's deep fjords and sheltered harbors provided ideal locations for the establishment of whaling stations where whales could be processed into oil and other products. The advent of modern whaling techniques, including the use of steam-powered ships and explosive harpoons, allowed for the large-scale harvesting of whales in the Southern Ocean, and South Georgia quickly became a hub for this activity. The first permanent whaling station on South Georgia, Grytviken, was established in 1904 by Norwegian whaler Carl Anton Larsen.
Grytviken soon became a bustling center of activity, with hundreds of workers, mostly from Norway, but also from Britain and other countries. Grytviken was followed by the establishment of several other whaling stations on South Georgia, including Leith Harbour, Stromness, Husvik, and Prince Olaf Harbour. These stations operated during the austral summer months, with workers returning to their home countries during the winter. The conditions at these whaling stations were harsh, with long hours, cold weather, and the constant danger of accidents. The whaling industry on South Georgia reached its peak during the first few decades of the 20th century. At its height, the island was home to several thousand workers, and the processing plants at the whaling stations operated around the clock. The exploitation of whale populations was intense, with entire species, including the blue whale and humpback whale, being hunted to the brink of extinction. By the 1930s, the whale populations in the Southern Ocean had been so severely depleted that the industry began to decline, leading to the gradual closure of the whaling stations on South Georgia. The last whaling station, Leith Harbour, closed in 1965, marking the end of an era on the island.
South Georgia also played a key role in the history of Antarctic exploration, particularly in the legendary story of Sir Ernest Shackleton. Shackleton, an Anglo-Irish explorer, is one of the most celebrated figures in the history of polar exploration, and his 1914 to 1916 Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition became one of the greatest survival stories of the 20th century. After Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, became trapped and eventually crushed by pack ice in the Weddell Sea, Shackleton and his men embarked on a harrowing journey across the ice to reach the uninhabited Elephant Island. Realizing that rescue was unlikely, Shackleton and 5 of his men set out in a small lifeboat, the James Caird, to reach South Georgia, more than 1,300 kilometers or 800 miles away. After 16 days at sea, enduring freezing temperatures, violent storms, and near starvation, they miraculously reached the southern coast of South Georgia on May 10, 1916. However, their ordeal was not over, as they had landed on the uninhabited side of the island, far from the whaling stations. Shackleton and 2 of his men, Frank Worsley and Tom Crean, then undertook an extraordinary overland crossing of the island's mountainous interior to reach the whaling station at Stromness. This journey, which took 36 hours, was the first known crossing of South Georgia and remains one of the most remarkable feats of endurance in polar history. Upon reaching Stromness, Shackleton was able to arrange the rescue of his remaining men, all of whom were eventually saved. Shackleton's connection to South Georgia continued after his death. In 1921, during another expedition to the Antarctic, Shackleton died of a heart attack while anchored off South Georgia. He was buried at Grytviken, where his grave remains a pilgrimage site for adventurers and historians alike. The island also played an important role during both World War II and the Falklands War. During World War II, the island was garrisoned by British forces to guard against potential German activity in the South Atlantic, though the island saw no direct military action. The most dramatic event, however, occurred during the Falklands War. In March 1982, a group of Argentine Marines disguised as scrap metal workers landed on South Georgia at the abandoned whaling station of Leith Harbour, raising the Argentine flag and claiming the island. This act was part of Argentina's broader attempt to assert sovereignty over the Falkland Islands and surrounding territories, including South Georgia. In response, Britain launched Operation Paraquet, a military operation to retake South Georgia. After a brief but intense period of fighting, British forces succeeded in reclaiming the island on April 25, 1982. The recapture of South Georgia was an early and significant victory for Britain in the Falklands War, which continued for several more months before the British eventually regained control of the Falkland Islands as well. Since then, South Georgia has remained under British control. King Edward Point serves as the administrative centre of the island and is home to a British Antarctic Survey research station. This station conducts important scientific research on a wide range of topics, including glaciology, marine biology, and climate change. The former whaling station at Grytviken has been preserved as a historic site and now includes a small museum, the South Georgia Museum, which documents the island's history and its role in the whaling industry. In recent decades, there has been a significant focus on the conservation and restoration of South Georgia's ecosystems, which were heavily impacted by human activity during the sealing and whaling eras. Efforts to eradicate invasive species, particularly rats, which were introduced by sealing and whaling ships and posed a severe threat to the island's native bird populations, have been highly successful. The eradication of rats was completed in 2018, leading to the recovery of several bird species. Despite its harsh climate, South Georgia is one of the most biologically diverse regions in the Southern Ocean. The island is home to a staggering array of wildlife, including millions of seabirds, seals, and penguins. The lack of significant human habitation and the island's status as a protected area have allowed these populations to thrive. One of the most iconic species on South Georgia is the king penguin, with the island hosting one of the world's largest colonies, numbering over 200,000 pairs. Other penguin species, such as gentoo, macaroni, and chinstrap penguins, are also abundant. The island's beaches and shores are often crowded with seals, particularly Antarctic fur seals and southern elephant seals. These seals come ashore in vast numbers during the breeding season, creating a spectacle of noise and activity. South Georgia's skies are dominated by seabirds, including the wandering albatross, which has the largest wingspan of any bird, and the South Georgia pipit, the only songbird native to the island. The island also serves as a breeding ground for the South Georgia pintail and several species of petrels and skuas. The surrounding waters of South Georgia are equally rich in marine life. The cold, nutrient-rich waters support a diverse ecosystem, including krill, which forms the basis of the food chain, supporting fish, seals, penguins, and whales. The Southern Ocean around South Georgia is a critical feeding ground for several species of whales, including humpback, blue, and fin whales, which have seen their populations slowly recovering after the decades of whaling. The island's rugged beauty, combined with its rich history and extraordinary biodiversity, offers a unique experience that is hard to find anywhere else on the planet. However, the journey to South Georgia is not for the faint-hearted, requiring a significant commitment of time, resources, and a willingness to endure the challenges of polar travel. It is accessible only by sea, as it lacks any airstrips or airports. The vast majority of visitors arrive via expedition cruises, which typically depart from Ushuaia in Argentina, the southernmost city in the world, or from the Falkland Islands. The journey to South Georgia usually takes 2 to 3 days of sailing across the Southern Ocean, a notoriously rough and unpredictable stretch of water. The Drake Passage, which separates South America from the Antarctic region, is particularly infamous for its stormy seas, and many travelers experience strong seasickness during this part of the voyage. Tourism on South Georgia is carefully regulated to protect its fragile environment and to ensure that visitors have a meaningful and educational experience. The number of visitors allowed on the island at any given time is limited, and tourists must follow strict guidelines to minimize their impact on the island's ecosystems. Landings on South Georgia are typically made by Zodiac boats, which allow for flexible and intimate exploration of the island's coastline. As interest in polar tourism continues to grow, South Georgia is likely to see increasing numbers of visitors in the coming years. However, the island's administrators and the tourism industry are committed to ensuring that this growth is managed sustainably. By adhering to strict environmental standards and promoting responsible travel practices, South Georgia can remain a pristine and protected wilderness that offers an unforgettable experience for those who are fortunate enough to visit. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, check out our other videos, and remember to stay curious.